I'm Brian Scordato, and this is the Idea to Startup podcast brought to you by Tacklebox. We accelerate ideas into real companies through the Tacklebox membership, and we think through startup strategy every Wednesday on the Idea to Startup podcast. You're here because you're thinking about an idea, or you're ready to launch something, or you already launched something and you're running full steam ahead. We're here to help with the counterintuitive stuff. On to it. Today, we're going to pop open the old mailbag and knock out a couple of fantastic questions. And I know a bunch of people won't listen to today's episode because it's Thanksgiving week, but every time I skip a travel day pod, I get a bunch of sassy, passive aggressive emails that say something like, "Sure would have loved a pod for this 5-hour drive I've got, but luckily my first million has a new episode, so I'll listen to that." And yeah, that email only happened once and it was 3 years ago, but damn it, Kyle, it stuck with me. So we'll do a mailbag today, just for Kyle. The goal was to do a mailbag good enough to pass the time for the travelers, but not good enough to be one of the main episodes that everyone listens to. But then I got into it and I loved it, and it was so good I might kick off a series. We'll see. And please, in general, do send me questions. I love answering them, and most of them I just reply to and don't put on the pod. Brian@gettacklebox.com. Enough preamble. The first question is a super fun one, so let's get into it. Hey, Brian, if you had to stop everything and start a company today, what would it be? Thank you to Jeff in Leeds for this. There's a Leeds in England and apparently one in Alabama too. I don't know which Leeds Jeff is from, but weirdly, Alabama and England are two of our highest download density spots. Like 30% of our emails come from Huntsville, Alabama. Something startup-y definitely happening there. Anyway, I love this question and I think about it all the time because the answer changes like the tides depending on how I'm feeling and what I'm seeing. Right now, all I see is chaos. The markets are a bubble. AI funding is a bubble. VC is a bubble, or it might just be altogether broken. No one has any idea if AI is going to replace everyone's job, or most people's jobs, or just some people's jobs. And they don't know if it's going to start with middle management, or entry level, or investment bankers making $1 million a year, or line cooks at Chipotle, or truck drivers, or all of those, or none of those. Chaos. During times of hectic, frantic change, I always lean on the sound wisdom of Jeff Bezos. Instead of trying to predict what's going to change, bet on what you're absolutely sure will not change. Look for customers with problems and needs that'll be there in 10 years no matter what AI does. That is my top guiding principle. Next, I jump into the idea framework I personally use. We've got a bunch of tools at Tacklebox that help folks come up with ideas and evaluate them at the earliest stage. And for me, knowing my strengths and weaknesses and the challenges I'm willing to deal with and the challenges I'm not willing to deal with, I've whittled those into a 2-layered system. First are 4 criteria my idea needs to hit. They are problem frequency, delta 4 potential, organic growth potential, and a wedge customer. I despise marketing, which might be surprising because we talk about it a lot and I'm confident I write effective messaging and all that. It's more that I've been worn down by reality. You can put the perfect product in front of a customer with endless, excruciating pain. You can market it perfectly with problem language and the right call to action and wedge. You can price it in the way that the customer gets clear value, and they'll still squint their eyes and shrug and say they've just got to wait for things to calm down before they can make a decision. They'll sit at the bottom of a well and turn down your rope. The reality of marketing for a hyper early stage startup is that it's mostly useless. It can work on the margins, but if you don't have a growth driver, you cannot rely on marketing. I think this is the biggest change I've seen over the past 10 or 11 years doing Tacklebox. I've watched potential customers become more and more paralyzed by simple decision making. You can blame whatever item you like from the poo-poo platter of nonsense that's bombarded us in these last 10 years, but people don't make decisions like they used to. That's the reality, and we've got to work within those bounds. The way 99% of people make decisions now is watching someone they trust be successful in some way, asking what that person did, and then doing that thing. You don't try a new coffee shop in town when it opens up. You wait for a friend to tell you they tried it and they loved it, and then you go. So we have to design for that reality. Because if you cannot fill the top of your funnel with customers, you can't get the reps you need to make a product good. That flow of customers is your lifeblood. Without it, working on a startup is miserable. Which means we have to work backwards and only touch ideas where we're confident that, if they work, they'll spread organically. It's the only thing I'll work on. And that is where the 4 criteria come from. Let's dig into them a little bit deeper. First, frequency. How frequently the problem comes up. I prefer daily, meaning the customer has the problem every single day, which gives you tons of opportunities to help them solve it and tons of success moments for the customer when you do solve it for them. People talk about success. If you solve their problem and they have a success moment every day, there's a lot of shots on goal for them to tell someone else about it. Next, Delta 4 potential. The current solution for the customer you choose has to be an absolute disaster. It should be a 4 out of 10 or lower, meaning there's a huge opportunity for a leap. People share leaps. If you can turn a situation that was a 4 out of 10 into an 8 out of 10, people will not shut up about it. Importantly, no one talks about moving from a 7 out of 10 to a 9 out of 10. The change isn't big enough and the initial pain wasn't bad enough. Number 3, organic growth potential. Will it be hard for your customers to not talk about this? I love cohesive customer segments, meaning a group of customers that constantly bump into each other. It's a killer combo with a frequent problem. See each other a lot, have the problem a lot, and there will be a really good chance your product gets shared. Finally, wedge customer. Is there a subset of customers with a smaller, unique problem you can solve to get early traction? This is where domain expertise comes into play. If an idea hits on these four, it'll have a built in growth engine. It won't require any marketing, and that is what we want. That is the first silo of my two-part system: problem frequency, delta 4 potential, organic growth potential, and a wedge. The second part is idea founder fit. There are two things I look for here: unfair advantage and a passion for a thing that other people hate. First, unfair advantage. Has the founder, in this case me, been subconsciously preparing to start this business for years? Do they have a secret, something they know that no one else does? And number two, passion for a thing other people hate. What do you, in this case I, like about an idea that other people hate? What energizes you but drains them? What stops 95% of founders from pursuing an idea but motivates you to go after it? The most important part of this framework is knowing that if you look for an idea with these traits in mind, you're never going to find one. The path is to go down rabbit holes. Find stuff you're interested in, problems you see, problems people tell you about, anything. Come up with an idea, then put it against the framework. Ideas come from the world, not by staring at the framework. And remember, it doesn't need to hit each of these on day one. You mold it or yourself so that it does. Back to my idea. Here is the one I am most interested in right now, the one I would start today if someone told me I had to. A coffee truck. Well, a fleet of them, but we'll get there. I tend to get obsessive about things, and I am obsessive about coffee. I make my own water for coffee. I know the difference between washed and natural process and honey process, and I know what to expect out of beans from Ethiopia or Colombia or Kenya, and I grind differently and heat the water differently and use different tools to brew each. If I found $5,000 laying on the ground, I'd buy the Weber Workshop's EG1, which will mean nothing to 99% of you, and 1% of you just sighed dreamily. I already ruined my wife. She can now only drink great coffee, and I'm confident I could ruin you too. Just give me a week. So I'm very interested in coffee, but that does not make a coffee truck a good idea. The next circle in the idea Venn diagram might. I grew up in a New York City commuter town. There are, by my count, 38 of them. In these towns, hundreds of people hop on trains each morning and commute into New York City for 39 or 47 or 58 minutes. They take trains that leave at 6:21 and 6:25 and 6:47 and 7:12 and rarely later than that. They do this 4 or 5 days a week, 50 weeks a year, and way fewer than you'd think do it with a coffee in their hand. I know because I commuted for years when I was living at home and working in the city after college, and because I went to these stations recently and I watched. I asked people getting on the train, "Why don't you have a coffee?" Now, most of these commuters are showing up at 6:43 for their 6:46 train, so they don't want to talk to you. But the people who did told me that making coffee was too loud in the morning and woke up the kids, or they didn't want to take the time to do it, or no coffee shops are open. They all said they got coffee later, near their office. I asked the question: if there was coffee waiting for them at the train, would they buy it? Sure, they said. But you listen to the podcast, you know that answer plus $1.50 will get you on the subway. It means absolutely nothing. But I asked it anyway because sometimes I don't take my own advice. Maybe we're making our way to a secret. Maybe there are thousands of commuters every morning across 38 towns whose lives would be much better with a coffee. Maybe. Okay, now to the other silo. The four idea qualifiers: frequency, delta 4 potential, organic growth, and wedge. If you remember from a minute ago, these are the characteristics for an idea that'll grow without much poking and prodding. Let's see how the coffee truck does. Frequency. Do these commuters run into the coffee problem daily? They sure do. Delta 4. Is the current solution a 4 out of 10 or less? Yes, I think so. A few of the people seem pissed that they didn't have coffee, and not having a coffee is a 0 out of 10. Now, there are some red flags here, because if coffee was that big of a problem, maybe they'd have figured it out. Delta 4 isn't a home run, but the next one is organic growth potential. If we built something, would it be impossible for it to not spread? Yes. This is the reason I love this idea. If we somehow make great coffee and get it into the hands of commuters every morning, and if we're even remotely creatively competent, like we just put the coffee in a bright orange cup, people are going to talk about it. Everyone on the train will see it. A highly visual product in a confined space, crammed with all of your other potential customers. That is a scenario entrepreneurs dream about, or at least I do. Finally, the wedge. What is the subset of customers we start with? What's my unfair advantage or my secret knowledge? Well, I told you it already. It's that I know an Ethiopian coffee is going to be finicky, and so you need to go with a higher temp and a finer grind size, but man oh man, when you dial it in, it'll sing. My wedge is the coffee nuts, the ones who know what I know, and I'll speak to them in that secret language and they'll convert and they'll lead the way. They'll be the first ones to buy the orange cups. Frequency, delta 4, organic growth potential, and a wedge. Interesting, maybe. And finally, the Bezos question. Am I trying to predict the future? Am I betting on AI hitting some level, or quantum computing, or VR, or anything else? Nope. I'm betting that people will commute to New York City and that they'll want great coffee on their way. Pretty safe bet. Of course, there's another question you have to ask about any idea. If it's such a good idea, why doesn't it exist already? And that is where we get, at least for this idea, to the stuff that people hate that I am going to have to love. Sometimes you can't answer this question, why doesn't this thing exist, until you're knee deep in the muck, and sometimes you can answer it the second you start working on the idea. For this one, it was the latter. As you might have guessed, and I think I'll go into it on another episode because this is fun. Comment on Spotify if you want me to. I also think that helps our algorithm or whatever. I want to plant a coffee truck in train parking lots from 5 to 7 every morning. Well, the second you start looking into that, you realize that the towns around here are a pain in the ass. The train stations are owned by Metro North, which is one battle, and actually not that bad of a battle. But the town needs to give you multiple permits, which are meant for either food trucks or cafes. I would be neither. And there are limited numbers of each given out. Here's a common conversation. Hi, I'd like a permit to sell coffee for 2 hours every morning from 5 to 7 a.m. Okay, well, we just gave out a coffee shop permit around the corner 2 years ago. Yes, I'd say, and I love that place, but it opens at 8 in the morning. We'll be long gone by then. It's totally irrelevant. And they would say, yes, but we gave them a permit, and we only have so many permits for cafes. End of scene. So the thing that people hate and might have pushed them away is the red tape, which I guess is something I don't mind too much. We're trying to push through it. So that, to answer the question, is the idea I would go after. Maybe a bit surprising, and I do have a bunch of techie ideas too, but for the framework I've got, I think that is the most promising one. We didn't touch on profitability, but it's a very profitable thing to sell coffee in the way we'd be selling it. Now, we've spent too long here, and we've got to get to the next question. So, to wrap up, Silo 1, the entrepreneur stuff. What is your unfair advantage? What are you passionate about that other people hate? And Silo 2, on the idea and customer. Problem frequency, delta 4 potential, meaning the current solution is god awful. Organic growth potential, meaning your customers won't be able to not share. And a wedge, a subgroup or subproblem you have serious intimate knowledge about and a place to start. And finally, during times of turmoil, figure out what won't change. Don't try to guess what will. Okay, let's do some jazz with a discount code, then get to our second question. Hey, we've got a little discount going, 50% off month 1 with code HOLIDAY2025 for Tacklebox. Apply at gettacklebox.com, and once you're accepted, put in the code. If you're working on a startup and have a full-time job, our program will help you validate and launch it in 90 days with me as your coach. 3 months to get this thing up and out. Or we'll realize the idea makes no sense and we can pivot, or we can call it a day. Either way, it's a win. Code HOLIDAY2025 for half off month 1. Back to it. Question number 2. Here is a real doozy. I won't say who it's from, and it'll be obvious why. Hey, love the pod. I'm working on an idea, and I'm trying to get my spouse on board with it. I feel like this will only work if we're aligned. It's not that they're saying they don't want me to do it, but it just feels like when it was this nebulous idea, they were excited and encouraged me. But now that I'm really going after it, there are trade-offs and there are sacrifices. I know this will never be easy and smooth, but any ideas? For sure. It took a few years for me to learn that my job at Tacklebox is 50% coach and strategic startup guy and 50% therapist. I'm wholly unqualified for the second part, so I stay in my lane on the stuff I know. And I've learned some stuff here. Most of our founders have partners and many have kids. This type of question comes up constantly. There are 3 things you can do, and we'll knock them out quick because they're straightforward. First, create boundaries. Remember the treadmill. Second, run weekly updates, lines not dots. And third, get clarity on stress. Name and create metrics around the actual risk. The reason I'm answering this question is the advice is super helpful for solo founders that don't have partners too. Because in that case, you're just fighting an inner battle where your left brain wants you to stop this nonsense and your right brain just wants to cook. First, boundaries. If I asked you to hop on a treadmill and sprint, you'd hate me. If I told you to hop on a treadmill and sprint for 7 minutes, you'd pay me $150 an hour as a trainer. If you tell your partner that you're going to be working on your startup nights and weekends, quote, until you get enough momentum that you can go full time, they are going to hate you. No one wants to sprint with no end date. So, create a sprint. Say that over the next 2 months, I'm going to work on this idea during these times. I'm going to have this support system in place, coaching, Tacklebox, whatever. I'm going to be able to make these decisions at the end of the 2 months. To make those decisions, I'll need to learn X, so everything is about learning it. Piece of advice number 2, run weekly updates. People get excited about things based on lines, not dots. If you're trying to get VC funding and you pitch someone your idea, they're not going to invest. You've only created 1 dot. The next dot you create will be the next meeting. They can compare the first dot to the second one and measure the slope. If it's steep, meaning you're moving up and to the right on the progress graph, then maybe they'll invest, but probably not, because they'll want to see 3, 4, 5 more dots to ensure that the slope is consistent. Your partner is the same way. The dot of I have an idea means absolutely nothing. The second dot of and this is the progress I've made starts to create a slope. Slope is very exciting. Progress is exciting. So make sure you're adding dots and showing slope. Weekly updates are a great way to do this. What you did this week, what you learned, what you're going to do next week. Sunday night, over dinner, after the kids are down. Then watch Pluribus. Finally, number 3, get clarity on stress. Nebulous stress is paralyzing. Specific stress is tackleable. If your partner isn't on board, they're stressed about something. Find out what it is. Is it financial? Is it a time thing? Is it relationship strain? Is it the fact that they're now the normal, boring one? What is it? If you don't know, you simply cannot alleviate it. If it's financial, make sure there's an abundance of transparency in your weekly meeting on financials. If it's a relationship, set up binding weekly dates. I'm not qualified to help more here, but hopefully you've got someone in your life that is. Find out what is actually stressing them, call it out, and attack it. I will now take off my startup Dr. Phil bald cap, and we'll do one more bonus question, because it felt like that was a little shorter than I thought it'd be. Here it is, from Eliza in California. What is the best $100 gift for a brand new entrepreneur? Great question. I mean, the obvious answer is to pony up a bit more and get them Tacklebox, but we'll assume that's off the table. I would start with books. The best books you can buy are the ones on your specific domain, the stuff other people haven't read. But if you aren't sure what those are, start with the basics. First, Disciplined Entrepreneurship. Probably the best startup book ever written. I'll link to all of these in the show notes. Second is The Personal MBA, the best business book ever written. And third is The Power of Habit, the best habit book ever written, although Atomic Habits and 4,000 Weeks are both great too. Learn about entrepreneurship, business, and how to set yourself up to be productive, and you're moving in the right direction. That is like $50. Next, I want to help this person with accountability and feeling like they're actually moving forward. For like $10 a month, you can join FocusMate. It is a virtual co-working tool. You sit on what's basically a Zoom call with a bunch of other people working on interesting stuff, and you have a visible checklist of what you'd like to get done in the next hour. Then you do it. So I'd give them 2 months of that. That is $70. We've got 30 left. And to stay on theme, I'd buy them a $30 gift card to the local coffee shop with a caveat. That coffee cannot be drank by them. That is customer interview coffee. There must be a potential customer's butt in the seat across from them drinking from that $30 gift card. It's not for them. Okay, I hope this was entertaining and took the edge off the ride to Uncle Steve's. Maybe the kids quieted down for a bit, and maybe they didn't. But now you can go listen to My First Million, Kyle. Have a great Thanksgiving, everyone. And yeah, if you want more coffee shop talk, comment. Maybe we just do the whole thing live here? Who knows? Have a great week. Hey, we've got a little discount going. 50% off month 1 with code HOLIDAY2025. Apply for the program at gettacklebox.com, and once you're accepted, put in the code. If you're working on a startup and have a full-time job, our program will help you validate and launch it in 90 days. 3 months to get this thing up and out with me as your coach.